Hello and good evening, everybody, and I'd like to welcome everyone to what is apparently episode 47 of Album Rant. And I am really excited for this episode because for the very first time, I'm going to be talking about the one and only REO Speedwagon. Well, technically, I have kind of covered them before, but it was an episode of Face Off, and I don't really count that as an actual episode of Album Rant. But this will be the very first time I have ever done an album rant on REO Speedwagon, and boy, I am excited. Yes, American hard rock band, later kind of delved into pop music, but they kind of found their place there. But believe it or not, there was a time where they were a full-fledged hard rock band, and that is going to be the era of the band's history that I am really going to focus in on tonight. So, they formed in the late 60s, actually, and man, yeah, these guys have been around for a while. But they formed in Champaign, Illinois, and the founding member was keyboardist Neal Doughty, who to date is the only original member still in the band. He is the only member who has been in the band ever since its formation. But on, back, like I said, in the late 60s, somewhere on the University of Illinois campus, he met up with drummer Alan Gratzer, and they decided to start jamming together, and they did a lot of Beatles covers, which made a lot of sense because at the time, the Beatles were pretty much ruling the world. But they started jamming out a bit, and they found a lot of other members. I'm going to be honest, I cannot keep track of the revolving door of members that went in and out of this band at the time. It's very, very complicated. But eventually, they settled on a name for the band called REO Speedwagon, which was named after a 1915 truck design, of all things. I mean, kind of an odd thing to name a band after, but, you know, it worked, so I guess I can't really fault them for that. But they started playing a lot of gigs, mostly in bars, and they definitely had some boogie influences as well. It was quite interesting. But again, mostly it was a lot of cover songs. They didn't really write a whole lot of their own material. But in 1968, they finally got a dedicated lead vocalist by the name of Terry Luttrell, or Luttrell. I'm going to be honest, I cannot pronounce his name. I don't know the actual pronunciation. In my episode of Face Off, I said Luttrell. It could be Luttrell, but again, if anyone out there in the audience knows better than I do, please correct me in the comments section. I would love to actually know the answer. But, you know, sometimes if you really want to know the answer, the truth is just another lie. But anyways, through that, they went through even more lineup changes, but a very significant lineup change happened in late 1970. A guitarist by the name of Gary Richrath joined the band. And apparently he had heard of these guys. I don't quite know how, but he had. And apparently he drove over 100 miles to see them play. And he had a purpose. He had a mission. It was to join the band. And he apparently had the mindset that he was going to join this band whether they liked it or not. Well, I'm glad they liked it because I really liked it because that was a very, very good move. And I'm going to talk more about him later on. But finally, they got a bass player and his name, who went by the name of Gregg Philbin. And in 1971, under the lineup of Luttrell, Richrath, Philbin, Gratzer, and Doughty, they released their very first album, appropriately entitled REO Speedwagon, and I loved it. It is definitely very different from the sound that we know them by today. It's definitely different from the sound that most of their mainstream success was dependent on, but it absolutely rocked. and it definitely had some psychedelic elements to it, and it sounded a lot like Deep Purple in my opinion, and that's really pretty great because I love Deep Purple. But some of the hits from that debut album were Gypsy Woman Passion, Anti-Establishment Man, Sophisticated Lady, Dead at Last, 157 Riverside Avenue, and Lay Me Down. But unfortunately, after that one release, Terry Luttrell, he left the band, and he would eventually go on to be the lead vocalist for a group called Starcastle, which I don't really know too much about, but he was replaced in 1972 by a lead vocalist by the name of Kevin Cronin. Yes, he goes back that early. But in 1972, they released their second album entitled REO TWO. Are you confused yet? I don't blame you, because the first album was called REO Speedwagon. The second album is called REO TWO. TWO obviously spelling 2 because it's their second album. Makes sense. But this album was a definite improvement on its predecessor. This is one of my favorite rock albums ever. And I gotta be honest, Kevin Cronin is a far stronger lead vocalist than Terry was. I'm just gonna be honest. I know there are people out there who don't like him, and I totally understand that. Some of the moves he made in the late 80s, early 90s were questionable at best, but that does not change the fact that he is a very talented lead vocalist. And the REO TWO album absolutely rocked. It had hits such as Let Me Ride, How the Story Goes, Being Kind Can Hurt Someone Sometime, Music Man, Like You Do, Flash Tan Queen, and Golden Country. And so it seemed like they had made a very, very good move hiring Kevin Cronin as lead vocalist. Well, unfortunately, he missed a lot of rehearsal sessions, and apparently he was having a lot of issues with the band over the direction they would take. I'm not exactly sure what his idea of a good direction was at the time, but apparently it didn't jive too well with the band. So for the third album, Kevin Cronin is out and Mike Murphy is in. And yes, over their first 3 albums, they went through 3 different lead vocalists. Kind of interesting. But in 1973, they released their third album entitled Riding the Storm Out. And something about this one didn't quite sit well with me, at least not as well as the previous one. Don't get me wrong, it had some phenomenal songwriting on it, and it definitely rocked. But the direction they seemed to take was more of a blues direction, and I'm not sure I fully agreed with that, but nevertheless, there were still some great songs on there, such as the title track, Whiskey Night, Oh Woman, Movin', Son of a Poor Man, Start a New Life, Open Up, and Find My Fortune. And I still liked it, but again, not as good as the first 2. And another problem I think I see with this as well, Mike Murphy. I don't think he's as strong as a vocalist as Kevin was, not even Terry. And his vocals, to me, he sounds kind of whiny, which I don't really dig that much. But again, it's not enough to sink the album. No. It's still a great album. But, finally, for their fourth album, which was released in 1974, they finally had an album that had a consistent lineup, because Mike Murphy came back for the fourth album, and it was entitled Lost in a Dream, and I really like this one. It seemed to be a lot more hard rockin' than maybe Riding the Storm Out was, and some of the hits from it were definitely the title track, Down by the Dam, Give Me a Ride Roller Coaster, what else? Wild as the Western Wind, which is a really catchy song. I wish they played that one live more often, but it's okay. But then in 1975, they came out with their 5th album, and it was entitled This Time We Mean It. And Mike Murphy was still on lead vocals, and as far as the title goes, I'm guessing that's implying that the first 4 albums were just practice albums. I guess it means they weren't really being serious before, but this time, no, they're going all out this time. Well, unfortunately, I think out of these early records, This Time We Mean It was their weakest one, and really it all comes down to the sound, because I have a feeling they were getting very, very highly influenced by the Eagles, and they really adopted more of a country rock sound, and I'm going to be honest, I have never been a fan of the Eagles. I know there are people out there who love them. I know they're very popular. I know they're legendary. It's just not my cup of tea. And, well, REO Speedwagon seemed to be riding that wagon, no pun intended. And to really hit the nail on the head, they even had a cover of Out of Control, which was an Eagles song on that album. And yeah, the sound was really, really not doing it for me. But I mean, it's still a pretty solid album, but it's definitely the weakest out of the era that I'm discussing. But apparently, in 1976, things were not quite working out with Mike Murphy, so they were, again, looking for another lead vocalist, and they did probably one of the best things that they could have. They rehired Kevin Cronin. Yes, Kevin Cronin is back in the band. And these lineup changes are very synonymous with Iron Maiden, in the sense that the original lead vocalist was solid, but didn't really take the band to great heights. Then their main vocalist came in, only to leave, to be replaced by someone else who I didn't really care for, only for the main lead vocalist to come back and would be with the band for the rest of their tenure. And they released their 6th album in 1976 called REO. So if you are not already confused, this is probably even more confusing, because the first album is called REO Speedwagon. The second album is called REO TWO. The third one is called Riding the Storm Out. The fourth one is called Lost in a Dream. The 5th one is called This Time We Mean It. And the 6th one is called REO. Yeah, that actually happened. And it was great to have Kevin back as lead vocalist. And of course, the entire band is really knocking out of the park. But unfortunately, they're still kind of... They definitely have those Eagles influences on the REO album. I think that sound, which was kind of flat, definitely hurt it. And it's a shame, because there were some great songs on the REO album, like Keep Pushing, Any Kind of Love, Only a Summer Love, Breakaway, Flying Turkey Trot, and Lightning. But, yeah, again, the sound just kills it. It's too much country rock, and it was too flat, in my opinion. But after that, they decided in 1977 to release their very first live album ever. And it's called Live You Get What You Play For. And that is what I am going to be discussing tonight. Whew! Took me a long time to get there, but I guess better late than never. And this is the cover right there, as iconic as it is. That right there is Kevin. That right there is Gary. That right there is Gregg. That right there is Alan. And that is the one and only Neal Doughty right there on the keyboards. This actually is a gatefold. And by the way, this is obviously an original press. Sounds great, by the way. But we have another picture of the band right here. We have Gregg and Alan and Gary and Neal and Kevin. They're all there, and there are the credits right there. And you will notice something over here. Kevin is the lead vocalist, and he also played rhythm guitar. Well, let's look over here. Gary Richrath is the lead guitarist, but it seems he is also the lead vocalist. Well, the thing is, ever since the Riding the Storm Out album, Gary sang lead vocals on at least one song. On Riding the Storm Out, it was Find My Fortune. On Lost in a Dream, it was Wild as the Western Wind. On This Time We Mean It, it was Dance. And on the REO album, he actually shared lead vocal duties with Kevin. He sang just as many songs as Kevin did, so I'm not sure if it's fully accurate to say Kevin was the lead vocalist on the REO album, but, you know, he was there. So let's go ahead and see what we have here on the back. This has 4 sides, actually. This is a double live album, and it's absolutely incredible. But this is side 1 right here, and it all kicks off with Like You Do. And it's from the REO TWO album, and this one absolutely rocks. This was the 6th song on the REO TWO album, and I love that version. I think I like this one even more. Starts off and it goes da-da-da-da-doom, 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 and incredible intro, and Kevin absolutely kills it. Again, he is one of the driving forces behind this band. His lead vocals are incredible, and with a lesser vocalist, I don't think I would have liked them nearly as much. But, you know, it all kicks off and it goes, well, I see women who cross their legs when they sit down to the table, and I see women who look to the sky screaming, Lord, I believe in the Bible. And boy, it's incredible. It's fast at first, but it's got a nice swinging, almost boogie rhythm to it, and I just cannot get enough of this song, okay? It's about 6 minutes or so, and towards the end, it's got kind of a soft section, but still, it absolutely rocks. And again, the rhythm is just so unique and dynamic. I love it. I have seen these guys in concert 8 times. A lot of the time, they were playing with someone else who I also really wanted to see. But these guys are constantly touring, and you can't ever go wrong with an REO Speedwagon concert. Well, the last time I saw them in 2022, they did play Like You Do for the very first time that I heard it, and you better believe it, I was rocking out, I was going nuts. Everybody else didn't really know that song. I'm like, yeah, look at me, everybody. I know this. I'm a true fan. But it is a great song, and I love it. Then we have Lay Me Down, which was from the debut REO Speedwagon album. And so the lead vocals were initially by Terry Luttrell, I guess. And Terry did a decent job, but Kevin, again, just knocks it out of the park, okay? Again, this definitely has a lot of boogie influences to it, and I definitely respect that, but on this live album, it definitely becomes more of a hard rock song, and I just love it. So lay me down when you're through with me. It's absolutely phenomenal, and I definitely suggest checking out Lay Me Down, underrated REO Speedwagon track. Then we have Any Kind of Love, and I gotta be honest, this is from the REO album, the 6th album, after Kevin rejoined the band, and the original version sounds very, very flat, but not here. This one is a lot more kick into it, and I love it. The original is really more of a country rock song. On the live album that I'm discussing right now, it's definitely a hard rock song, and I really, really love it. It's very fast, but again, the rhythm is just so amazing. I love it. And you might be thinking that when you hear it, that it's kind of diving into some more sappy, oh baby, I love you kind of lyrics, and, well, you wouldn't be fully wrong, but it's got enough hard rock influences on it for me to really, really love it. Something great about REO Speedwagon is even when they're being a girly pop band, they're still great and they're still catchy. And Any Kind of Love very easily could have become just a typical girly pop song, but they totally make it work. Well, side 1 is going to conclude with Being Kind Can Hurt Someone Sometimes. And this comes off of the REO TWO album. And yeah, This thing is an underrated gem. Starts out very dark, very murky, very, very eerie almost, and that's so not the kind of thing you would expect from REO Speedwagon. But it starts picking up once again, and Kevin is just on the ball because I've been told that being kind can hurt someone sometimes. And it just keeps moving. It's got a very fluid feel to it until it comes to a very explosive crescendo at the end. And boy, the ending, it's just an explosive meltdown, and it's just incredible. I highly recommend Being Kind Can Hurt Someone Sometimes. It's a great, underrated deep cut. And that is side one, and boy, it kicks things off so well. My favorite from side one is either Like You Do or Being Kind Can Hurt Someone Sometimes. Right now, I'm probably going to go with Like You Do. Like You Do is written by Gary. Being Kind Can Hurt Someone Sometimes is written by Kevin. Both phenomenal tracks, but Like You Do, just the rhythm, it's just so upbeat and so catchy. I can't bring myself to not choose it in this round. So that's my analysis of side one. Well, there are still 3 more sides, and it's not getting any worse. So let's move on to side number 2. And it kicks off with Keep Pushing, which is from the REO album. Kevin writes this one and he sings it. And the very first time I heard it, it was on a Greatest Hits album. And initially, I thought this was Roll With The Changes. I had heard that song on the radio. I didn't know the title of it. I'm like, okay, this song has to be on here somewhere, but I don't know what it's called. And Roll With The Changes goes, keep on rolling, and I just thought Keep Pushing must have been it. Well, I finally got to that one, and no, it wasn't. But that's not a bad thing, because this song is also really, really good. But on that Greatest Hits, I had heard the remix. The remix kind of gives the song an extra punch to it. The bass is a lot more prevalent, and it's got more of a hard rockin' feel to it. But it was initially from that REO album when they were still doing the whole Eagles thing. And when I finally heard the original mix, it sounded pretty flat. But the live version totally rectifies it, because it's a good live version. It's very upbeat, it's very swinging, and it all starts off with da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then finally Kevin goes in and goes, I used to be lonely till I learned about living alone. And something very funny, whenever they play this in concert, right when you think he's gonna start singing, he doesn't, and the band just jams for a bit while Kevin talks to the audience. And I always hear people around me start singing. I'm like, he's not doing it yet, you noobs. But yeah, the live version is great. Again, it's got that hard rockin' feel to it. Then we come to Only a Summer Love. And this one is more of a melodic ballad, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And even though it's more melodic, more softer, it still really, really works, and it's very, very catchy. And again, the guitar is heavy enough for me to really enjoy it. This is not Can't Fight This Feeling kind of ballad. This is more of a, it's definitely got more of an edge to it than Can't Fight This Feeling, and I really do like Only a Summer Love. Now, Gary did write this one, and Gary actually sings it. And Wikipedia, initially, I actually made this correction, made a huge deal about saying Gary Richrath actually sings Only a Summer Love. Well, he sang half the songs all on that album. So him singing Only a Summer Love is nothing significant. And I mean, he also sang on 5 Men Were Killed Today, the 3 other songs I already mentioned. He sings the chorus on Any Kind of Love. He sings the verses on Breakaway. He sings the entirety of Tonight. So taking the microphone is nothing new for Gary Richrath. But yes, it is a good ballad. It's very swinging, Very, very catchy, and I love it. I guess it was only a summer love. And yeah, I know I'm not as good of a vocalist as he is, but that's my very best, so please don't be too harsh on me in the comments. But yeah, really enjoy it. Then we come to Son of a Poor Man, which was off the Riding the Storm Out album. So yes, this one was originally sang by Mike Murphy. And he did an okay job, but like I said, his style of singing is just way too whiny for me, and Kevin absolutely knocks it out of the park. And the thing is this also, Kevin was still in the band when they started recording Riding the Storm Out, and so there is a version out there, and it's actually on the Decade of Rock and Roll compilation, where he is the lead vocalist, and it sounds a lot better. Again, I know there are Mike Murphy fans out there. I think Kevin is a stronger lead vocalist, and that is fine. But this live version, it rocks, okay? This live version is perfect, and I love it. Kevin's on point. The entire band is on point. And again, it has less of a boogie feel to it and more of a hard rock feel to it. Something interesting. The original version started with a guitar intro, goes this actually starts with a piano intro, and he actually sings the first verse in the piano intro, which I always found was interesting, and I like it all the same, but I think I just like that guitar intro better. It kind of is just like saying, yep, we're getting right down to business, let's start rocking. And every time I've seen them and they played Son of a Poor Man, they did kick it off with that guitar intro, which was on the original version, not this live version, which is kind of interesting. But I'm only reviewing the live version, and the live version is awesome. Then it ends with I Believe Our Time Is Gonna Come, which is also off the REO album. And this was never quite my favorite song. I never really quite gravitated to this one. Maybe I just need to hear it a few more times to fully appreciate it. Well, I've been listening to this song for like 15 years now, and my opinion hasn't really changed. Maybe one day it will, but yeah, this one's a little bit slower. It's kind of got a rhythm to it, and yeah, it just doesn't really quite do it for me, but you know, live version is solid. The song itself is pretty solid. I just think there's better stuff on here. But Son of a Poor Man is my favorite one from side 2. That is a definite. So let's move over to side number 3. And it all starts with Flying Turkey Trot off the REO album. Now, unfortunately, the original version off that REO album, it's not really hard rock. It's country rock because, like I said, they were still trying to be the Eagles at the time. This totally makes up for it. This is an amazing version of Flying Turkey Trot. It is aggressive. It is metallic. This thing absolutely rocks. It is about a 2-minute and 30-second instrumental or so, but yeah, the beat to it is great. The entire band is on point. Gary absolutely nails it. And if you have heard the CD version of this album, after Flying Turkey Trot, it goes straight into 157 Riverside Avenue. Well, I'm not reviewing the CD version. I am reviewing the vinyl version, and we actually are not quite going to go into 157 Riverside Avenue quite yet. We have a few loose ends to tie up, and it's going to go into Gary's guitar solo. This is an 8-minute guitar solo that had to be cut from the CD release because of time. They can only fit so much music on one CD. It is an amazing guitar solo. Gary just goes off and does his own thing, and it absolutely rocks. Gary is one of the underrated guitarists in our society, and it's so unfortunate that he passed away a few years ago, but phenomenal guitar solo. I love it. But then, after the guitar solo, it starts winding down a bit, and it goes into 157 Riverside Avenue, which they still do play today. And this came off the original REO Speedwagon album with Terry on it. And again, really has a boogie feel to it, which I actually kind of like. It's very swinging. I mean, it's definitely led by the piano, but I really, really enjoy it. And of course, this version's a little bit harder rocking, but again, both versions are pretty solid in my opinion. Interesting fact, these guys do predate Meatloaf, but my brother used to be a Meatloaf fan, and we would often hear the Bat Outta Hell album driving to and from swim practice every day. And there's a song on that album, I think it's called Paradise by the Dashboard Light, I want to say, and it sounds a lot like 157 Riverside Avenue. I have mixed feelings on Meatloaf and the Bat Outta Hell album. A lot of those songs don't really hit it for me, but I mean, Paradise by the Dashboard Light sounds a lot like REO Speedwagon, and well, I really love REO Speedwagon, so that really, really works. But within this live version, Kevin kind of breaks it down in the middle, and we have kind of a jam session, and Kevin's talking to the audience, getting a rise out of them, and it's really, really fun. I've only actually heard them play this song once. I wish they would play it more, but you know, they can only do so much. But side 3 concludes with Riding the Storm Out. And I think I mentioned earlier that the original version of Riding the Storm Out with Mike Murphy wasn't really, let me back up. It was good, but it wasn't that good. This version absolutely kills. This version is awesome. Starts out with that keyboard intro, goes, I did that really horribly, forget I did anything, but that keyboard intro absolutely sets the stage, and this thing starts rocking as soon as it kicks in. Gary absolutely owns this. This is his song, he wrote it. And this is a staple within all of their live shows, and it's usually the last song they play. But yes, it is fast, it is hard, I absolutely love it, they absolutely kill it on this one. Riding the Storm Out, this is the official version actually. This is the version you always hear on classic rock radio, and I think that was a good move because this is the best version of that song. And well, I just cannot say enough positive things about it, and I think Riding the Storm Out is my favorite from side number 3. Gary's guitar solo is also awesome, but I gotta give the edge to Riding the Storm Out. So, there's only one last thing to do except talk about the encores, which is side number 4. And we have 3 songs on here. The first one is Music Man, initially off the REO TWO album. In fact, actually, all of the encores are off the REO TWO album. Music Man is about a 3-minute rocker, and it's pretty fast, it's pretty by the numbers, but I really love Music Man. I have seen that they still play this one. I've just never been to a show where they actually did play it, and I wish they would. But you know, it's your typical standard 3-minute rocker, but it's really great. And again, Kevin, this is Kevin's song, he totally owns it. Now we're going to move to a very controversial subject, Little Queenie, which is a Chuck Berry cover. I'll be honest, I am not much of a Chuck Berry fan. He was a little too early for me. He's not quite my style of music, but I recognize the influence he's had on a lot of the artists that I like. And actually, this is not the only cover of this song that I have. The Rolling Stones actually also covered this, and it was pretty solid also. So yeah, in my collection, I have 2 covers of Little Queenie, but not the original. But I mean, it's a solid cover. I think it's pretty catchy. I think even though it's definitely still got that boogie feel to it, I really, really love it. And it's only improved by the live version. And so yes, I will give my endorsement to Little Queenie. But they saved the best for last. This ends with Golden Country. Wow. This was on that initial greatest hits I bought, and it was very much not what I expected. I expected these guys to be a pop rock band. This is not a pop rock song. This is pure, straight, hard rock. And it's definitely an anti-Vietnam War song, and it's definitely asking America to point out and recognize some of the injustices that have actually happened. I mean, here's some of the lyrics. Your blacks are dying, but your back is still turned. And your freaks are crying, but your back is still turned. You better stop your hiding, or your country will burn. And wow, those are not the kind of lyrics that you would expect from REO Speedwagon. This thing, like I said, rocks. It is the perfect song to fist bump to. Dum 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 dum. And yes, they still do play this one in concert. Not so much recently, but I've heard them play this many times, and I go berserk during it. And actually, Kevin actually tells the audience that the song over the years has taken on a new meaning to them, and it's not so much of an anti-Vietnam War song as much as it is a tribute to our men and women in uniform and how we need to respect and honor the troops that are going overseas to fight for our freedom and our democracy. And I definitely really respect that. And I'm sure a lot of people in the services really do respect that. But yeah, in the middle, there is an amazing jam session. And the live version is a lot better than the studio version. The studio version, while it's still rocked, sounded a little bit flat. This one has a much better rhythm to it, and Gary is just going absolutely nuts in the middle. There are some great guitar solos in the middle. And believe it or not, I am actually saying this borders on heavy metal. And Golden Country is one of my all-time favorite REO Speedwagon songs, and it's definitely my favorite from side number 4. And that is going to conclude my review of Live You Get What You Play For. So just to recap, side 1, my favorite was Like You Do. Side 2, Son of a Poor Man. Side 3, Riding the Storm Out. And side 4, Golden Country. And I definitely think you need to pick up this live album. This is one of the greatest live albums I have ever heard, and this was when I really discovered that REO Speedwagon was not your typical arena pop band. No. There was a time when these guys rocked, and this would be it. So anyways, thank you all for joining me tonight. I had a great time talking about this album. Next time, we're going to discuss one of my very favorites that kind of diverged into 2 different directions. But until then, have a very pleasant evening.